Sparking Change with Gigi, a show that aims to make the world a better place by bringing together authentic minds. This show encourages each of us to be the change we wish to see in the world. Get ready to be inspired and join us on this journey to create a brighter future for all.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sparking Change with Gigi. Today's show, I am your host, Giovanna Torrimone, and I'm so excited for this show. I can remember what I need to say. Anyway, I'm your host, Giovanna Torrimone, and we're going to be talking about today is rewriting your money story. Yes, and I know everyone has a money story, but is it a money story that is of lack or of abundance? And how do we get from lack to abundance? And today's guest, Yulin, sorry, how are you, Yulin? Welcome
Good.
to Sparking Change with Gigi. I'm happy that you're here because I think you touch on a topic that is truly something that everyone has a money story, right? But how does it serve them? And does it create the mindset that we really want with the story? How do we do it? So, share with us, like, what have you seen? Because you are a money empowerment coach. You work with a lot of people to really help them navigate through their money story, basically, and create a story that really empowers them versus disempowering them.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the opportunity, Gigi, because this is, talking about money is one of my favorite things to do. Besides traveling, I love talking about money just because I do feel it is such an important aspect of our life, whether you like it or not. And so we might as well embrace it and in a way that actually help us live a more fulfilling life. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity for this conversation.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And I think maybe you can shed some light on, why are we always making money first, right? I believe a lot of people, it's like, I can't do this because I don't have money. I can't do that. And they keep repeating why they can't do something and always go back to the source of money. Is there another way that we can embrace what we're here to do and explore and do great things with that? How can we just switch that narrative?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking. This is a really, really important question. Well, first of all, whether you are a believer in us being a spiritual being or not, we do live in a 3D material world, at least at the moment. And because of that, we need money, right? And so what I see as kind of the almost part of the source of these struggles for many people is that in our general population, there's this dichotomy of I'm either the spiritual person, therefore I don't care about money, or people on the other side, I just want money. I don't care about the other woo-woo stuff. Money is the only thing that's real, right? And so you have these two forces that are almost kind of invisibly fighting with each other. And you have people on both sides really trying to figure out what their place is, how to fit into kind of this model. Personally, as a money empowerment coach, I think if we can bring the two together, when we are looking at integrating our spirituality and the practical aspect of money, if we can integrate the two, the intersection is what I like to say, that's where the magic happens. And so to answer your question, why do we always talk about, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough money? I think there's also something deeper, why somebody always feel there's a lack. Right. And for some people, it is because they literally don't have money in the bank account. So totally understand if you don't have anything in the bank account, yeah, that would be your language, right? I don't have money to do this or that. But I think for a big population, a big percentage of our, people in the world, they actually do have money in the bank. They are making decent income, and yet they still feel this lack. So that's where it's kind of interesting. Like, so why is it that people, even after working hard, making money, being responsible about saving, still have some money in the bank, and yet they can never really quite get out of this lack feeling, like there's scarcity, this fear. And so and this is why I love what I do, because this is the deeper work, right?
Mm-hmm.
To me, I think there's obviously, for different people, it's a different reasons, but money, if you think of it as a tool, because that's what a lot of people say, money just a tool to exchange your time for this, or your expertise for that, or exchange my portion of my resources for a product or services. In theory, yes, it's just a tool, but it's not like a hammer kind of tool where it's just physical, it's just working. Money is more like a magnifier. And so what it does, it magnifies what's already inside of us. So for many people who constantly experience this feeling of lack and this feeling of not enough, oftentimes it's just reflecting the fact that deep down inside, that's how they feel about themselves. And so it's really this lack of,
There's something missing.
there's something missing in themselves, actually, but they're using money as a way to express that feeling.
Yeah.
And so
And I guess,
yeah.
I guess if we look at it from the perspective, if I understand, is that, we can have all the material things we want, right? And we can buy this and we're happy, we got it. And then, a few days later, you're like, okay, you're not even happy anymore, because it's not the material things, right? It's not the bank account. It's not the nice cars, the nice house. It's something within us that's missing, like a state of mental peace that we don't have internally, that we're missing.
Yeah. So what's really missing, and this is something that we talked about in our Napoleon Hill's group study,
Yeah.
is about the self-image.
Mm-hmm.
And I call it your money identity. So what's really missing deep down inside is, what does your self-image look like? And oftentimes our self-image is someone who may not feel confident about themselves, who may have in their childhood been told that they were not good enough, right? And so there are a lot of reasons why we don't feel enough. But I think if I have to summarize everything, it really comes down to your self-image. If you cannot see yourself as someone who is abundant, then it's just not going to happen in the real life.
And yeah. And when we say abundance, we're not just talking about money here, right?
Mhm.
Money is just another object. Abundance of feeling loved, feeling that, you have connections with people. Like there's a sense of that the abundance of, somebody just giving you validation of who you are. I mean, yes, it does come down to self-image. I mean, it's all
Yeah.
part.
And money, it is money, it's kind of its own thing, but money is also one of those things that actually is tied through all the parts of your life. So sometimes when somebody actually has a lack of love in their life, they oftentimes would use money as a way to compensate for that lack.
Yeah.
And so money isn't just its own thing, and it is actually affecting abundance, or your sense of abundance in all parts of your life.
Correct.
And so I've had clients who has 8-digit figure in their bank account, and she is still constantly living in fear. So why is that?
Yeah.
Right? It's certainly not because the amount of money she has in the bank. It has everything to do with how she sees herself. And that's why, I talk about, the self-image, in that there's a certain aspect of her self-image that's really lacking. That's in her mind, that's not enough.
And it's transferred to other areas of her life.
Yeah.
Right. And I just think back to how, people save money They don't want to spend anything on themselves. You know, they'll put it under the mattress,
Mhm.
right? And they'll save and save and save for the rainy day.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, let's talk about those people because there are there. And again, they're saving because they're worried about the future,
Right.
right? And
Right.
they'll deny themselves
Right.
things to enjoy life now.
Right. So I think this is my personal opinion. People with the scarcity mindset,
Mhm.
it is a combination of your life experiences and maybe something that you are like born with as a certain personality trait. And the reason I say that is because I have 2 kids and I teach them the same thing about money.
Mhm.
And they grew up in our household. So they're getting the same environment, growing up, they're getting the same things. They're getting the same teachings from me,
Yes.
but I can see them behave very differently. And I would say my daughter tend to be on the scarcity side. My son tend to be on the he's not completely spending, but he's very little. One of the things I did with them is growing up is I give them different envelopes for different purposes. That's how they keep their money. And one of the envelope is called a fun wallet. And this is the wallet they get to spend on anything they want. I'm not going to question. That's where they get to have fun, right?
Mhm.
So for my daughter, and she said once, she said, I can never imagine myself spending down to the last penny in my phone wallet. And this is with, they also have a wallet for savings, they have a wallet for other things, and they have a wallet for charity. You've already done the asset allocation that I taught them, that you've got your base covered. And this is the leftover. It's really for you to enjoy your life, right? Because we're talking about
Right.
how can we have a little balance where we are fiscally responsible, but then we're also enjoying our life. We're not just like living frugal just for the sake of being frugal, right?
Right.
So that's what the fun wallet is all about, is you get to enjoy it. She has a really tough time just spending that money, even knowing that this is purely for fun. My son, on the other side, completely like fine. He will often spend it everything and then just build it back up again. So just this one, my own anecdotal experience also tells me that sometimes there is a component of their own personality. And maybe for some people they need to dig a little bit deeper. But also there's a large part is their own life experience. And then the other part is what are they getting from their parents, right? Growing up.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's-
Because, people talk about generational trauma. It is real about money generational trauma. And
Mhm.
so if the parents have experienced a certain kind of trauma in how they look at money, they will most likely, unless they're consciously working on themselves and kind of shifting that,
Yes.
they will most likely pass that down to their kids without even knowing that that's what they have done. So there's certainly some aspect to that. So again, I think it's a combination of different factors, and that is also why it's so worthwhile for every single person
Yeah.
to do this work for themselves, to dig a little deeper, so that you can, like you said in the description for our talk, is so that you can actually have some sense of liberation, right?
Correct.
Instead of constantly living in this very constructed way.
Correct. And you're right. You become very limited, just mindset wise as well, because
Mhm.
if you are going after a dream, you're going to say, I can't go after my dream because I don't have any money to do that.
Mhm.
But that mindset, you mentioned about parents being mindful of what they say, right?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
children listen with 2 ears, they're wide open when they hear about money, right? So if the conversation is negative and a lack and fear, you can't,
Mhm.
in the household. I mean, I grew up with it. I grew up with it in
Mhm.
my home where, there was a struggle all the time with money and buying food and expenses. And I can see how that affected me growing up.
Yeah. And so for many parents who have never received kind of the money education themselves, in their mind, they're probably thinking, I don't know how to deal with money, so I don't teach my kids about money.
Mhm.
That's actually not true. Either way, you are teaching your kids about money with the way you're behaving yourself, right? So as kids, we learn by watching our parents. So even as a parent, you don't have to say a word about money. Your kids are learning from you. And I think that's something that's very, very important for all the parents to know that. And I also hear from many of my clients in that growing up, they get mixed signals. My dad acts this way with money. My mom acts the other way. So now I end up growing up just confused.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so there you go. So either way, we are teaching our kids. It's really the difference between, are you mindfully, intentionally teaching kids about money in a certain way, or are you just unintentionally teaching them something that you may or may not like?
Right. I actually love the structure that you have in place there. Share it with us, with your kids, because I'm sure many parents in the audience would like to hear. How do you do it with your kids?
Yeah, so I learned this from T. Harv Eker, the guy who wrote the Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. Many, many years ago, I went to his seminar, and he taught that there, and I took home and implemented with my kids. And so I started with my kids when my daughter was 8 and my son was 5.
Wow.
And so what it is they each get 5 envelopes. And so the categories for the envelopes are savings. And I tell them, saving is the money that goes in that you never ever touch. I don't care. You just don't ever touch that. Right? There's education. And that's with the idea that you're growing up, you're going to school. But even after you get out of college, you're always going to be learning something for the rest of your life. So, and because of that, because education is important, we should always set some money aside for that. The third one is charity.
Mm.
And so we've done a lot of games with them about having them pick a charity that they want to donate money for that particular year. And then we would go do that. The other one is called special projects. And this is, these envelopes is actually meant for adults, but I've kind of adapted to the kids.
Yeah.
Special projects are for scenarios like, you can think in the adult world. You may have your regular budget, but hey, your car breaks down. You didn't plan for it. Now you need money for a new car.
Mm-hmm.
Or you decided that I want to remodel my kitchen, right?
Yeah.
And so these are bigger ticket items, but then it's not the day-to-day spending, so you may not have included in your budget. So where did that money come from? Well, you can take it out of savings, or some people put on the credit card, unfortunately. And neither of them are really like, if you keep doing this with your savings, then you will end up
Right.
without knowing emptying your savings account. Putting on the credit card, definitely a bad idea. And so a easier way actually to do this is each month you put a certain amount of money aside for these special projects.
Okay.
And so the money is just there. And so whenever you need it, it's already there without having to dip into your savings.
Perfect. Perfect.
And then the last one is the fun wallet. And this is, like I said,
Yeah.
they get to spend on anything they want. I'm not going to judge. And I will tell you though, I've been doing this with them. My daughter's now 24. So
Yeah.
we started when she was 8 and my son
Wow.
is 21. So they grew up with these envelope systems. And I will tell you, just through my own observation, the fun wallet is the most learning opportunity. It's where the learning opportunities are with the kids.
Right.
And here's the reason why. All the other envelopes, when they're young, you're kind of planting that idea in their head about savings, charity. They're like, okay. It's not really their own idea. The fun wallet, what they're going to spend on, that is their idea.
Right. Those
So
are their choices they make, right? Based on the
yeah,
choices they make.
right. So that's where they learn how to spend money. That's where they learn how to make decisions, how to make choices. And I've seen with my son, plenty of buyer's remorse with whatever he wanted to buy one time. But these are all, learning opportunities, right?
Absolutely.
And so now as they go into college, I feel like, I mean, of course, at this age, they're still kind of like, I'm not sure or whatever. But at the same time, money to them is not foreign.
Mhm.
We've been training them and we've been talking about money as they grow up. So, they're pretty comfortable around money. Right?
That's beautiful. Beautiful. So we're going to take a small commercial break and we'll come back and we'll talk about the process. But I also want to talk about like the process of how do you rewrite your money story, right?
Sure.
So we'll be right back.
Okay.
Now, the vast majority, approximately 95% of the people of all countries, go around and around without aim or purpose. They drift with the circumstances of life, good or bad.
A drifter is one who permits himself to be influenced and controlled by circumstances outside of his own mind.
Whereas the successful individuals create their own circumstances and ride them to victory.
When you're on purpose, you're living on purpose. You will never quit if you have a real purpose.
A burning desire to be and to do is the starting point from which the dreamer must take off. But what I have done has been recorded, it's been tested, it's being taken to a free world, and it's going to benefit millions of people who are not yet born.
And it's going to benefit millions of people who are not yet born. We're some of those people that we're spreading this to the world. As your awareness grows, the doubt is gone so that you can manifest whatever it is your heart desires. Isn't that beautiful?
I love that commercial.
I know, that was beautiful.
Because it's all interconnected to what we're talking about here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When we talk about, the process of rewriting your story really begins with making different decisions, right? Creating a different mindset. And, you said before, there's the other side where people literally, truly do not have a savings, right? And they look at that and they're very worried and they fill their mind with, all the reasons why they don't have the money in the bank. And so let's talk about how if we change that story, right? And we know that you don't make money unless you serve, right? It's an exchange. It's an exchange of service. So when we are talking lack, there is no service happening because we're so focused on we don't have. But to start changing that mindset and the talk and the narrative, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, when we talk about rewriting our money story, so first of all, what is our money story? Everybody has one. Some people realize we have one. They may know what it is, but maybe only at the surface level. Maybe because usually these things are a few layers deep, right?
Sure.
Some people don't know that they have a money story, right? And they're like, what do you mean my money story? So either way, if you want to rewrite your money story, or you don't know whether you want to rewrite your money story,
right.
The first thing to do is to figure out what your story is. And there are a number of questions or things that you could do to kind of figure that out.
Okay.
The first thing that I would tell people I would ask people is, what is your earliest memory of money? And if you can close your eyes, go back into that time, what emotions come up for you? That could be one indication of what that story is. Another way to figure out what that is you can help me filling the blank. Money is filling the blank. And I would say, do it right away. Don't think the first one that pops into your mind, that is the answer. Sometimes I will say, especially in the world of personal development, for some people who have been doing the work in this area, oftentimes they will give you the right answer. And because they've been doing work,
yes,
but that may or may not be the real story deep down inside. It may still be the brain story, right? And I say that because I've had scenarios where, there was one time I did a whole day workshop. At the beginning of the workshop, I had people answering a bunch of questions to kind of help them identify what is their money story. And so her answer to money is, and she had, money is just a tool. It's not good or bad. It just helps me for the exchange or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at that answer, you're like, oh, she has a pretty good, not very dramatic, not very emotional answer to money. It's like, oh, that's pretty good. But throughout the day, in the afternoon, we did some exercise. It became more and more clear that money was more than just a tool for her. Money represented all the other stuff that ended up triggering her a lot emotionally. And so sometimes we have to do, what we do in the Napoleon Hill study groups is go 7 layers deep. If you say, my chief aim in life is this, you may ask yourself why, and you go 7 layers deep.
Right.
I think the same process you can use the same process for the same.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
So that's, that's another way to figure out what your money story is. And then the third way is something we've already talked about, which is ask yourself, what did you learn about money from your dad? What did you learn about money from your mom? And that's also very telling.
Because those are essentially created your beliefs about money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I mean, going back, we hear many times, money is the root of all evil.
Mm-hmm.
Is that really true? Because, and we think about that and we're like, yeah, money makes people bad. And it's not the money that makes people bad. I think this is the biggest misconception about money, right? It's what's going on inside that person that makes that person not be a nice person, right?
Right, absolutely. So, like I said, money is the magnifier, right?
Yes.
It brings out what's already inside that person. And those characters may not have shown up when he didn't have the money. It's just now that he or she has the money, those characters, those traits start to showing up. So it's not that maybe money facilitated that,
right?
But it's not money itself. It's what's already inside of the people.
Yeah.
So so there's, a number of questions like that you can figure out and I have other exercises, experiential exercise that I do with my clients to help them figure out what their story is. Once you become clear about what your story is, then you can actually decide with intention that is this a good story or not? Maybe you have a really good story. Right. And you can say, hey, you know what? This is a pretty good story. It has helped me to achieve what I wanted to achieve in life. Yeah, I like to keep that. Great. But for a lot of people, once they see what their story is, it becomes very clear. Mm-hmm. It's not helping me. In fact, it is the thing that keeps me stuck, that prevents me from moving towards the goals that I have in my life. And this is why so many people are in this hamster wheel. Like we are just treading in water in the same place. We never swim to the shore. And it's because the stories, right? So if your stories are like this, then you want to rewrite it, right?
Of course. And I also believe that, there's a big connection between money and emotions, mm-hmm. right? So the emotions are driving, or the money in the bank is driving the emotions and vice versa. And until we rewrite the story, you're absolutely right. We're spinning and spinning and spinning because mm-hmm. we feel good one time and then we feel bad again. We feel good and we feel bad. But mm-hmm. we're never taking the step to actually change the process because, of course, change is not, so easy to do, right?
Right. And so the other thing I want to kind of bring it up, and there's the book called The Power versus Force.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so I use that concept because I want to use that concept because if we take a step back and look at how most people operate, most people feel like, at least the people who feel like they don't have enough money, their thinking is, I just need to focus on making more money. If I make more money, it's going to solve all of my problems.
Yes.
And so it's this, sure, we need to be focused on, achieving certain goals, but then there's this energetic level. We're actually in this force field. We're not this in the power field. We're actually in this hardcore force field that I'm trying to make more money. I'm trying to do all these things. And the harder they try, the more they feel like they're stuck. And it is because they're on this force energy spectrum. There's no creativity here. There's nothing. There's hard force. So for a lot of people, they literally need to stop. They need to stop from whatever they're doing in life and take a step back and figure out, how can I bring more creativity? And again, Napoleon Hill talks about that. How can I use my imagination? How do I bring more creativity so I can start flowing more in my own rhythm, in my own energy flow, so I can actually step into my power? And so this is also, to me, is one of the biggest missing link for a lot of people who feel like, I've been working hard, I'm but I'm still not where I want to be, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so I wanted to kind of bring that up because, again, that is part of the, so if you want to rewrite the money story, exactly what are you going to do? That part is understanding what kind of energy field are you working in? Are you in the heart force energy to trying to force something to happen?
Right.
Or are you really trying to learn to flow with it? And because once you're in that flow state, you don't need so many zeros in your bank account to feel confident, to feel abundant, right?
Right.
Because there's no definition of you need to have this amount of money for you to feel abundant. There are a lot of people in this world who have okay savings. They're middle class. They're not the richest people. And yet they still feel abundant in their life and about themselves.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. And I also know that, from a spiritual aspect, I think, when we look at the grass, the rivers, the water, I mean, we have abundance of all natural resources, right? And if you were to feel that and appreciate that, I also think that more can come in other ways, right?
Yeah.
But again, we have to be of service to receive that. And if we're in a fear mode, that the lack mode, it becomes lack of not just money, but lack of everything else, which I mentioned before. There's we talked about how you and I are both in a Napoleon Hill, and we studied this material, and we all know we must learn to earn. Like there's no other way about it. We must learn to earn.
Right.
And what you're learning is, what we're learning, let's say that, very different than what we have learned. And I found myself going through the process of unlearning some of the things that I was exposed to and I learned in school or from my parents, and relearn, which is almost similar to saying I rewrote my money story.
Absolutely.
Right.
And you know what I say, that, with the work that I do with my clients, instead of saying they're working and coaching with me to learn something new, a big part of it is unlearning everything they've been doing, they have been behaving, they have been believing. You're absolutely right. Actually, the bigger portion of the work is the unlearning part. Because once you've done that, the rest of learning becomes so much easier. You start to learn in a flow.
Right. And what you're unlearning is really the conditioning of the mind, the beliefs about money, right? So we need to create new beliefs about money.
Yeah. And those beliefs, those conditioning that you just mentioned, to me, they're the source of resistance.
Yes.
And resistance is one of the biggest barrier around money for people. There is so much internal, like for people, like if they can be honest with themselves and to just say, let me be honest, how am I acting and behaving around money? For many people, they can find a large percentage is in the resistance. And
Or
so the work is about removing that resistance.
right. And
The
I
resistance comes from those conditionings and beliefs.
yes, and I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. And I also believe that it's what we're saying to ourselves.
Mhm.
You know, people don't think words are powerful or words have
Oh,
any meaning. But if, you know, every day you say, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't afford this, I can't afford that, you know, it, how do you expect to move forward? Like that's an old story,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Versus, okay, let's see what can be done.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
and that's why I always say, you know, sometimes when you feel like you're stuck, especially around, you know, I coach around money, so I'm just focusing on the money piece. And sometimes, you know, when people say I don't have this or I don't, or is if you feel stuck, you need to take a step back, ask a different question,
right, right.
and that's how you move forward. You ask a different question.
You know, we learn about autosuggestion,
Mhm,
doing affirmations,
mhm.
and you know, there's a part of the world that don't believe in that. We believe in it because we see the effects of it, we see the change of it, and again, it takes work, right? It takes commitment, it takes intentions, you know, intentionally to do this. What are your thoughts about that? What do you tell your clients about when we talk about, you know, changing beliefs and creating new belief statements?
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I think affirmation, autosuggestion, those absolutely work to the extent that you can also couple it with actions.
Oh, of course.
But I think sometimes that's also where the missing link is that there are some people who really deep down don't want to do the work, right? They practice affirmation, they practice this, they practice, and they're just waiting for the universe to just give it to them without earning.
Yeah.
And then so you have cases where people are like, well, this doesn't work. I've tried it. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it is very important. And because you study the material and you're like, yeah, of course, right? But I
You
think
don't
for
apply
a lot
it.
of people out there, part of it that they don't believe it is because maybe they've tried it and it didn't work for them.
Hmm.
And that's only because they've only done half of the equation. They're
Right.
missing the other piece.
Right. Right.
Now, the other part about affirmation and why certain people don't believe it, they because they haven't really seen the results on the positive side. You know, I certainly I hear people say, oh, those positive thinking, positive affirmation, that's just all crap or whatever, right?
Yeah.
They haven't seen the results, but one way they can actually test it out is to test out the flip side of it. Because autosuggestion works both ways.
Correct.
So if they don't want to try it, they don't want to practice the positive affirmation, they can try with the negative affirmation and see what happens.
It's whatever cup you fill, right?
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
so true. So true. So let's, if we were to give them one starting prompt
Mhm,
on rewriting their story,
mhm.
where would they begin?
Well,
You know, how they do it.
after they've figured out, right? So the first step is figure out what their story is. So let's say if they figured out what their money story is, and it is something that they are very clear that's not going to support them in moving into the direction that they want. So how do I rewrite it? Well, I think the first step is to figure out what you want.
Mm,
Kind of like what Napoleon Hill said, you get very clear about your desire,
that's
right?
right.
And it sounds obvious and it sounds easy, but it's actually not so easy to get it done right. And here's why. For somebody who has been living in this mode of not enough, lack, when you ask them what they want, they actually don't know what they want.
Right.
And even if they tell you, oh, I want more money. How much? 10 million. They just pick up a number from their head, right? And they may pick up the number from their head, but deep down in their body, they don't know what it feels like to actually have $10 million.
Right.
And so until they actually go through that process, and this is again what we are learning in Napoleon Hill's, you know, the studies, is that until you really embody, embrace, and in every core of your being, it's hard to really come up about what do I really want.
Right.
And that is the base for not only rewriting your money story, but also that's a base for, that's kind of like, if you run a company, you've got to have a mission statement. You've got to have, a top line goal, which will dictate, sorry, my computer, which will dictate what you're going to do for the rest of the year to run your company, right? Same thing with your life. If you don't have a clear goal of what you want, then you drift. Kind of like
and I think, and absolutely. And that's what we're learning basically, is that if there is no direction, then you're lost. And therefore you see lack.
Yeah. And so in the area of money, one of the questions that I always ask people is, how much is enough? For every one of us, there's an answer, and you need to know your number. How much is enough? And it could be a number, say, I need $10 million in my bank account. That's a number. It could be a number in ways of monthly income to sustain the lifestyle that you want. So let's say if the lifestyle that you want is $20,000 a month, you need an income of $20,000 per month to support that. So it needs to be a clear number that is substantiated. It's not just a wild number that you pull out of your hat because it seems so large for you right now. Like, because I don't have money right now. Gosh, if I had 10 million, that would be great. That would solve all my problem. Right.
Yeah. It's not realistic.
Well, it's actually not about realistic. It's actually more about, it actually doesn't really relate to you.
Okay.
That number doesn't really relate to you. And when it doesn't relate to you, you can't feel into it. You can't live into that.
Right. Well, that's what I meant. Like, you can't connect to it because
exactly.
It doesn't seem real to you. You just made up this number from thin air, right?
That's right. Yeah. So it's definitely worthwhile for everyone to go through this exercise to actually know what is it that you need. What is your number? And this is one of the things that I do with my clients as the vision board exercise. I do what I call the vision board 2.0, which is you do the vision board, but then you also put price tags on them.
Right.
So then you know, what is your lifestyle? How much is it going to cost? So whatever number you come up with is actually substantiated by specific goals that you want in life.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love that, because now you're taking pictures of, we think in pictures. So now you're connecting the picture to the cost, to how much they need, right? So you're building that scenario of, okay, what they need. Now the biggest question is, what are you going to do to achieve that money? It's not, we're not talking about just, magic is going to happen. What are you ready to give? Because you got to give to receive, right? It's a universal law. So what are you prepared to give? And this goes back to what you were saying about having that desire or finding your purpose, because really finding your purpose and what you love to do, that's what you're exchanging. That's the exchange mechanism.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think sometimes that may scare people a little bit to, when we say you need to commit, you need to do all this. And this is the kind of words that our modern society hasn't trained us to embrace, right? Because we all
discipline, right? Get discipline.
Yeah. Yeah. We just want things quick without working for it, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it can be very scary for people. So what I say is break it down. Take one small step at a time. And so if I need $10,000 $10 million in my bank account, I know I'm not going to get 10 million in one shot. Right. So maybe it's, how do I get my first million? And if first millions, seems a little big, how do I get my first 10,000? And then how do I get my first 100,000? Because what they don't realize is, in the money world, once you figured out how things work, it will multiply exponentially
Yes. Yes.
eventually, right? So, but you've got to do the little steps at the beginning, which may seem boring, which you may or may not see as much results, but at
Right.
some point, your money gonna start multiplying on their own.
Yes, absolutely. And we talk about savings before and
Mhm.
investing,
Mhm.
and that part of it. I mean, it's all relative, right? We're in an inflation right now. We can only save less, and now we're being more frugal than before. So, what advice do you give the audience with? How should they manage their money? I mean, we talked about how kids to manage their money. What advice can you give for adults to manage their money?
Yeah, well, first of all, you have to know what you currently have and
Mhm.
how your money are currently invested. This is actually, I see as the biggest problem for the American society in general,
Okay.
that most people delegate the guarding, nurturing of money to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a lot of people say, well, I hire a financial advisor. I have somebody taking care of my money. Great. That is the great first step.
Right.
But do you know how your money is being invested? Most people don't. They may have a 401k account. How is your money being invested in your 401k account? Do you know? What funds is it invested in? What are these funds doing in the first place?
Right.
And so that is the level of knowledge that we, as a consumer, as a savvy consumer, we need to have.
Yeah.
And so what I like to say is flip the role play. With my book that I published 2 years ago, the first chapter, I talk about becoming the CFO of your own life. And so if you imagine yourself as a CFO of a company, which is your life, the CFO doesn't do all the accounting.
Right.
The CFO doesn't do the specific stuff. The CFO manages the direction of the overall finance. And you need to do that for yourself. And if you don't feel confident, learn it, but you need to play that role. Once you know how I want my money to direct my life, how do I want to direct my money to work in a way that is also in alignment with my
Right.
values and all of that, then you can go hire a financial advisor who help you do the managing, the investing on your behalf, right? But right now, I find a lot of people they're flipping it around. They're not taking ownership. They're not taking agency of their money. They're delegating their money to another professional, and they're just hoping that he or she will do a good job that will take care of me in my retirement. And that is the biggest risk that I see with people. So to answer your question, how can people start managing their money? Well, step number one, you need to know what you are currently doing first, right? And through that process, you're going to start learning about different products, different services, and then you can gauge. And then based on the work you do about what do I really want, like what is my number, then based on that, then you can also strategically think and know what are the types of products is best for me. Because what happens is these days is we, as consumers, we always get sold to by salespeople, whether it's life insurance, whether it's financial products or whatever. We actually don't know what those products are. And so we buy based on that salesperson's sales ability, right? And I always say that every single financial instrument products, they were created for a specific reason. So at the end of the day, unless it's a real scam, but normally, if it's a legit product, there is a specific purpose, a specific group of clients or consumers that they're designed for. So the real question to ask as you're trying to figure out how to manage your money is not about, is this a good product or is this a good stock? The real question is this right for me?
For me, right. Because I remember, in my days when I was younger, I would invest more aggressively.
Mhm.
right? As I got older, I would like take a step back a little bit, right? Just to
Mhm.
make sure.
Right.
But one of those things that, comes to mind as you're talking is we don't ask questions. We just hand it over. I mean, I did
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and then when was it the stock market crashed and people lost a lot of money and
Mhm.
they blamed, the person managing their money, their financial advisor, like,
Mhm.
no, did you really stay on top of that money?
Yeah.
Because maybe you could have made a different decision if you knew, if
Right.
you ask questions, right? It's really
Right.
what you
Right.
don't know, you don't know. But if you ask, you may have made a different decision.
Right. And also just I do believe most financial professionals out there, deep down, they do want to do a good job serving their clients.
Hmm.
But until, like you said, until you as the customer start asking the right question
Right.
so that they can actually best support you and serve you. And so if you acting like a consumer who just want to check out because I don't want to deal with it, yeah, yeah, I trust you, just go take care of it. Right.
Yeah.
And when you're acting that way, it is also hard for the other person to do the right thing for you because they actually don't really know
Yes.
in the deep level of how much risk you can really take.
Right. Right. Beautiful. Beautiful. Um, so as we wrap it up, let's talk about just changing the mindset a little bit over money.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you said, it's an inner job that we have to do.
Mm-hmm. It's the
And
money work. I like it. The money work.
the money work, the money works. Um, changing to changing mindset from scarcity to abundance.
Mm-hmm.
As we go back to the beginning, we said it begins within, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's connected to something else.
Mm-hmm.
And until we do that discovery, we go through that discovery stage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we'll always feel like there's lack.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What is the number one thing that you feel that they can take the first step? Like you said, we don't have to look at the whole staircase, but the
Yeah.
first step to changing the mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
So
is your?
changing the mindset, there's actually kind of two things in that first step. One is I find that with a lot, especially this is especially true for women, but I'm sure it happens with everyone too. There's a certain amount of deservability. Like so many women in particular really struggle with this idea that I deserve this. And so what happens is when they are out shopping, spending money, doing this or that, oftentimes they have to tell themselves, well, I deserve it, right? As a way to remind themselves that they deserve it. So I want to say this. If you ever find yourself in those moments where you have to tell yourself, I deserve it, right? What that tells me is deep down, you actually don't believe you deserve it. That's why you have to tell yourself you deserve it. Because to me, every one of us deserve everything you want in this world, not just all at the same time. So there's sometimes what I call sequence to success and sequence to building wealth. So again, in those moments, ask a different question. Instead of saying, I deserve it, right? It's not about deservability. It's about, is this the right time to spend this money in this place, given my circumstances?
Right.
And people know that, right? People actually deep down, they know that this is probably not the best time to spend that money. Therefore, they have to tell them that they deserve it. So part of it is flipping that script of, do I deserve it or do I not deserve it? It's like, of course you deserve it. That's not even a question, right? So that's part of the mind shift that I think everyone has to make.
Beautiful.
And then the other thing is I know it's hard for people who have been living most of their life in this lack. It's hard for them to even if we tell them, feel into like you already having the money. It's hard to do when you never experience that.
Right.
Because it's just like, when we say, like, if you've never received love, it's hard for this person to give love because they've actually never felt it, what that feels like to be loved. Same thing with money. Like if you've always lived in this lack, you've never really been in this abundant mode, sometimes it's hard to go feel it. And so the one tool that I tell people is ask yourself one area in your life where you really excel at, and tap into that feeling, tap into that energy.
Absolutely.
And then you can kind of transform that same energy to the money side.
Beautiful. That's right. Because I really feel that, we have to feel that we are abundant. We are abundant before we can even receive anything else, right? The feeling is the key, because we have to switch. When we switch the story, it's like, if this is your story today and tomorrow you win the lotto, and then all of a sudden, like, the great feelings and emotions come up because you have the money now in the bank account. And I believe that's why people don't keep the money when they win the lotto, because, right? I mean, you can talk to that real quick. We're almost coming down to a landing, but
Yeah. So with that, I have a perfect analogy for that, right? And I say that every one of us was born with a bowl. And the size of your bowl is the capacity, it's the amount of money you can handle in your life. And so if your bowl is small and you get a windfall like a lottery, what happens? It's just going to spill over because your bowl is this little, and the bowl represents your capacity to receive and to retain the amount of money in your life. So if you truly want more financial abundance, if you want more more money in your life, you need to expand the size of your bowl. Yes. And that means you need to grow yourself so that you can actually be able to not only receive, but also retain all the abundance that come into your life.
Love it. What a beautiful ending. Thank you so much, Yulin. I appreciate you coming on today. And I mean, it's time that we all rewrite our money story so we can be, just feel fulfilled from the inside out, right? It's an inside job. You need to feel abundance from the inside out. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And until next time, we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me on Sparking Change with Gigi. I hope that our episode today has ignited a spark within you to create positive change in your own life and in the world around you. To learn more about how you can become a guest or supporter, head over to sparkingchange.now.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing, sharing, and leaving a review. Your feedback is incredibly valuable to me, and it helps me to continue producing content that sparks change in each of us and the world. You can find us on various platforms, including Google Play Store, Apple App Store, YouTube, Facebook, Roku, Android TV, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Thank you again for watching, and I look forward to having you join me again next week on Sparking Change with Gigi.